All right, I guess we'll start. Just a quick note about the midterm 2 weeks ago that we had. Everybody did pretty okay. Would have been nice if it was a little better, but I mean, it was pretty much on par with what happened the semester prior. But what I've noticed is that, like I said before, when when it's open book and open internet and you can talk to colleagues, I think it kind of gives a false sense of like, yeah, I'm just gonna totally bulldoze this thing and be awesome, but it's not. It kicks you in the ass, and it's because you still have to kind of know where to find all that information. You still really need to understand the lesson in order to even work in an open book or open internet test. Um, just a heads up, the final will be in the same format. Okay, so just keep that in mind based on how the midterm was, how bad the final is going to be as well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I also recommend like a Monday's class. They collaborated because they just had theirs. They collaborated. They were walking around and talking to each other and helping each other out and stuff. It was pretty cool actually. You guys were like dead quiet. So I would definitely recommend like collaborating. That's the whole idea. If you're at a job and you're stuck on something, you're obviously going to ask your colleague, right, to kind of help you out. You're not just going to try to suck it up because you'll get in trouble, right? So take advantage of that. Industry tests are meant to be like as if I took you and shoved you right into the industry. That's the whole idea. So you should be able to use the resources of not only the internet but the people around you to solve the problem. That's the idea. All right. Um, I did publish a lab, and I think I said this before. There's 12 labs altogether, and you can skip two. Okay, because 10 will be marked and the 10 highest will be taken. If you do the other two, that's fine. You can get them as bonus or whatever, but it's totally up to you. I didn't assign lab 6 because I completely forgot, but I did just put it up. So if you want to do lab 6, you're welcome. It's quite easy. It's just basically taking the code from the day's lesson. So you would have had to like follow along with the lesson, but it's taking that code from that day's lesson and pushing it to GitHub and pushing it to Heroku. That's basically it. So you're welcome to do that if you want for some easy marks. And then Lab 7 is posted today, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. All right, let's do today. Today's going to be a little interesting. We're going to talk about validation, sanitization, and normalization. Now, I used to do this lecture like in week 3. The second we started doing anything with the MySQL database, we took we covered this lesson, and the reason is because you kind of want to protect the data as it goes into the database, as well as retrieving the data from the database, just against hacks and cross-site scripts and stuff like that. Um, However, what I have found with this course is that it introduces this next level of complexity. And when you're just trying to grasp the concept of how you get data from PHP to MySQL, it's better just to take those little tiny baby steps, right? So now that we kind of have that down, right, we understand the concept of moving data from a form into MySQL. Now we're going to look at actually paying attention to what that data is and making sure that data isn't going to cause any issues, right? One of the biggest reasons is obviously to protect against hacks, right? We don't want cross-site scripts. We don't want SQL injections or anything like that that can corrupt our database. But not just that, also we want to normalize our data so that it's all uniform, right? So it always looks the same. It's in the same format. And so that's one thing we're going to talk about. We're going to also talk about, before that, we're going to talk about classes in PHP, so object-oriented programming in PHP. Up to this point, we haven't done that yet. Some of you have, though. Some of you have done PDO. How many of you did PDO on your projects? Nobody in this class? Okay. So PDO is another way to connect to the MySQL database. We've been using MySQLi. Tonight we're going to talk about PDO. Once you learn PDO, that's the way I expect you to connect going forward, mostly because PDO provides a lot more versatility when it comes to connecting to any SQL, because it supports all SQLs, not just MySQL. So I definitely feel like it's a preferred method. Plus, it has better securities with bound parameters and casting and stuff. So we're going to talk about that tonight, but because it works using object-oriented programming, I feel like maybe just a quick crash course in PHP objects is definitely warranted. It shouldn't be that bad because you guys have been doing object-oriented Java, right? And you're also in the C# class, so you guys have been building classes, and the classes in PHP are C-based, so it should feel familiar. Some of the syntax is a little different. It's still PHP, so it's super loose, right? And it doesn't require data typing. But other than that, it should still feel just like building classes in any object-oriented language. So we're going to make a very simple object, and then after that, we're going to cover PDO and how to work with PDO. We're going to have some fun with some Bootstrap. I'm not sure if you guys did Bootstrap in your HTML class. Did you? No? Okay, well, you're going to have some fun with some Bootstrap because I feel like every developer should know Bootstrap. It's how you can make something look pretty without being a designer, because Bootstrap does all the heavy lifting for you. And then we're going to do validation, sanitization, and normalization. So pretty heavy class today, I would say. But fun stuff. Hopefully fun stuff. All right. Let's talk about classes in PHP. And you can follow along if you would like with the lesson plan. Totally up to you. It's available in the weekly lessons. So some of this is going to be a recap, obviously. Like, for example, the big question, what is an object, right? Which, I mean, some people have difficulty explaining what an actual object is, but an object in programming is an instance of a class, right? So when we instantiate a class, the thing that we get at the end is an object, right? But that's kind of difficult when you want to create like a real world example around it. So the easiest way I find to understand what an object is basically by taking a look at things that are around us. So for example, if we were to analyze a car, we know that a vehicle will have something called properties, right? And it has functionality, right? So when we think about the properties of a car, it's things like the transmission type, right? The body type, the make of the car, the color, the manufacturing year, its fuel economy. Those are the properties of the car. They're not something actionable. They don't perform any type of movement or do anything functionally. They're literally just traits. They're things about the vehicle, right? Those are properties. And when we talk about objects, properties are variables that we basically set, just information about the particular object that we're setting. Functionality for a car, though, that's when we get into things like acceleration, direction, the lights, radio, climate control, turn signals, even seat operation, moving the mirror, all that type of stuff. That's all functionality of a vehicle, right? And when we look at that from a car's perspective, or when we look at that from an object's perspective, those would be our functions, right? Our methods or our data methods. What do you guys call them in your Java class? What do you call the functions of a methods? You're calling them methods? Okay. And just out of curiosity, what do you call your properties? Do you call them properties, fields? What are you calling them? Fields? Okay. So yeah, so fields and methods. So in this class, we're going to call them properties and functions because that's what PHP calls them. Same thing though. Exactly the same idea. So objects are made up of properties and functions, all objects, right? Whether they're real world or whether they're programmatical. They're all made up of properties and functions. And the easiest way to understand the difference between a property and a function is that properties describe an object. So they describe what it is. They describe its color, they describe its makeup, stuff like that. Functions, right? They are the functionality or the actions that the object is able to do. So properties, you could even say they're adjectives, right? Because they describe the object. And therefore, then functions would be what, if you were to look at them grammatically? Verbs, right? They're just verbs. They're actions. So once you understand what an object is, it's kind of interesting because now we go to the class, which is actually the thing you usually start with first. So what is a class? Well, a class is like, I'm sure you've heard this before, it's a blueprint, right? It's a blueprint that basically describes the makeup of an object, but in a super, super abstract way. So very general, nothing specific. That's the important part about it. It can't be specific, right? So when you're creating your class definition, you don't like predefine the color as red. because now that means every single car is red, and that's not true, right? Instead, we just create a property called color, and we don't give it any value, right? We don't make anything specific. We want it to be as general as possible. We're not going to get into inheritance in this class, so you don't have to worry about that. No inheritance, just singular classes. That's all we're going to work with. So a class is like a blueprint, contains properties and functions that every object will have. So every object we instantiate will contain the properties and functionality that's defined in the class. So you can think of it like a mold for casting a toy. While each toy may have a different color, they all behave the same way, and they contain the same attribute types. They will have, sorry, what was I saying? Yeah, while each toy may have a different color, they will all behave the same way and contain the same attribute types. So they'll still have the same attributes, they'll have the same functionality, however, the attributes will have different values. A class allows us to define what an object will represent. It helps us to enforce rules around the creation of an object. So we're going to create our first PHP class. So what I would like you to do, if you go to the week's lesson, you'll see the starter files. Please go ahead and download the starter files. Just makes it easy because we have a lot of HTML this time around, and I don't want to waste time just writing HTML. So it should take like not even a second to download. You're under week 7, so weekly learning, week 7, or lesson 7, starter files. Once it's downloaded, you can click the little arrow and choose to show in folder, or just navigate to downloads because that's likely where it's going to be. Click on that folder, right click on it, and choose to extract all. Okay. Now, last time we just basically extracted it in here and then copied it over to our WAMP64, which, you know what, we'll do the same thing. Why not? So I'm just going to get rid of this starter-files that's in here, so it's just going to downloads. Because what happens is it creates a directory within a directory, right? And so now you've got to get the one out of the other. This just makes it easier. When I click extract, I wind up with a folder called starter files. I'm going to drill into it just to make sure it's one level. It is one level, so I'm happy. So I'm going to copy this folder, right click and copy. I'm going to open up WAMP. Let the little black screens open up and close. Wait for it to go green. There it goes. I'm going to click on the W and go to the www directory. So by this point, you're probably getting used to where your files get served from. I'm going to drill into comp1006, and I'm going to paste this folder into there. Now, right now it's called starter files. Totally up to you if you want to keep it called starter files. I feel like it'll make things a lot less confusing if I rename it to lesson 7. So I'm going to rename it to lesson 7. It's htdocs, yeah. I think you still have a comp1006 directory, though. Can we put it in there? That's where we have been doing, yeah. So once you have the folder in there and you have it renamed or whatever you want it to be, I want you to drill into the folder. And we're going to start getting into the habit of doing one extra step when we start working with starter files, and that's to immediately apply Git to this folder so that we can use it later on and push it if we so choose to. So what I'd like you to do is click up in the top task, like the top address bar at the top here, and you'll see that it now says C WAMP64. It gives you the path, basically. I want you to copy that path. Then I want you to open PowerShell, and you have to run it as administrator. Either right-click at it and run it as administrator or take advantage of the little handy link it gives you. If you did it correctly, it should ask you to make changes to the device. Click yes. And the reason why we copied that is because we want to CD into that directory. We want to change directory. That's what CD stands for. So CD, paste, and hit enter. So now we're in that directory. So if I want to use git with this, what is my first absolute step on this directory? Before git add. Yep, git init. So git init will initialize a empty git repository. Well, not empty actually, I guess, because it'll have the code in there, but it'll initialize the git repository in this directory. Now we do git add. And we'll just do dot. Dot means everything, right? Absolutely everything. So git add dot. And then we'll commit it. So git commit -m. And I'm just going to write init lesson 7. Then when you're done that, hit enter. And it should say 5 files changed to 195 insertions. Or something around there. No, it won't. Why won't it be? We haven't added the remote. So if we wanted to do that part, we need to go to GitHub, create a new repository, grab the remote, but we'll do that at the end of the lesson. All right. Cool. So we also want to open the code, and I'm not sure if you knew you could do this from here. Instead of going back to the directory to do it, we can actually type in code dot and open the code directly from PowerShell, which opened on the other screen for me, but there it is. If it doesn't work for you, it should work for you because we all set it up together. But if it doesn't work for you, then you'll have to open it from the file folder. Ooh, let me zoom in a bit. All right, so we're going to create our first PHP class. You'll see a folder in there that says classexample.php. I'd like you to go ahead and open that folder, or file, I mean. And I'm going to show you a new little thing about PHP that I find makes your code look a little cleaner. I don't know why, I like it better. Up to this point, any PHP we've been writing inside a file, we've been doing PHP and then the closing PHP bracket. Just out of curiosity, is the closing PHP bracket necessary if we're only typing PHP and no HTML? How many people say yes? Is the closing PHP bracket necessary if we're only typing PHP and no HTML? You say yes? How many people say yes? A few of you? Okay. How many of you say no? And you would be correct. So PHP is kind of interesting. It'll actually self-close at the end of the file once the file is done. So once the file is complete, it will self-close. But here's a gotcha. If you include the file, you have to be careful that you have closed it. Because what does include actually do? Just copies the contents and pastes it in place. So if you haven't closed it and then all of a sudden you start typing HTML, you might likely get a glitch. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But we're not going to be including this file anywhere. We're literally just going to use it as it is. Actually, I might be wrong about that. We might have to test that. I might be wrong about that. All right, so I've got my opening PHP tag. I don't need to use a closing PHP tag because it's implied. If I write any HTML, I have to close it though, okay? But we're not going to write any HTML. And we're going to create our first class. And the keyword for creating a class is just like it is in any language that you work in, it's class. That's going to tell our interpreter that this is a class. The next is the symbol name. So I don't know if I've explained what symbols are. Variable names, function names, and class names are known as symbols. That's what they're actually called. So we're going to create our symbol name as example. Or you can literally call it whatever you want. Have fun with it. And I'm not sure why VS Code has issues, but it does with classes. It was glitching out the other day when I was building the lesson. Now, my personal formatting style for building classes, and I do this in almost any language I'm working in, I like to put a blank line at the just after the opening part of the class and a blank line just before the closing part of the class, and then all my code goes in the middle. I find that format easier to read. All right, so that is the minimum syntax for defining a class. If you define that, that is perfectly okay. PHP will do something with it, mostly because classes automatically have a few functions already attached to them by default in the background that you don't even see. One is called a constructor, and the other one is called a destructor, right? Have you guys learned about constructors and destructors yet? Not destructors? Oh yeah, every object-oriented programming language ever has destructors. Also has a copy constructor. So destructors are when the object is destroyed, it fires the destructor function. So what you use it for is garbage cleanup usually. So if you've added files or done things somewhere else, you'll use the destructor to kill out those things. Yeah. A copy constructor is anytime you create a duplicate of the object, the copy constructor function gets called. So every OOP language ever has all three of those. Actually, some even have more than that. But those are just defaults. So in ours right now, so we can actually use that right now as is, has functionality already built into it, ready to go. You can instantiate that. However, it's completely pointless because there's nothing in it and it would be just a waste of your time. So let's add some stuff, right? Stuff makes sense. So we're going to add some properties, right, to this, or fields as you guys call them, properties. And we can do it in a few different ways. We can just type in $message, for example, and that's now a property. However, we want to be, I'm going to use the word verbose. We want to be descriptive or verbose. And the reason is because anybody looking at our class that wants to use our class should easily be able to tell what the visibility of each of these properties or fields are. So visibility modifiers, does anybody know what a visibility modifier is? It's your public, private, or protected attribute that you add in front of your property. So by default, when we type in a variable name, they are immediately public. That's what PHP does with them. So they become by default public. Same with functions. If you don't predefine them, they're always public. So we want to be verbose though, so that people know what this visibility is. So we're going to type public in front of it. So what does public, private, and protected do? What is its purpose? What are their purposes? Just for, it's got a scope. For the class or the class and any inherited classes? Just the class. And what if I want to make sure that inherited classes have it, but not the instantiated object? Protected, exactly. So there's three types. So private is the class that you're in. Protected is the class you're in any inherited classes, which we're not going to do tonight anyways. And public is super slutty. Anybody has access to it. It's all over the map, right? But the most important part about public is that instantiated objects have access to those properties and functions, right? That's the big part about public. So we also are going to create a private one as well and call it secret. Shh, I have a secret. Let's see how good your OOP teacher is. Should you ever define a property as public? Why is that? I was like that too. I knew it for years. No. And then finally I was like, well, wait, why? Why should we not do that? The biggest reason that we don't make properties public and that we create getters and setters is because we want to make sure that every reference to that property references the exact value that we want to produce. Getters and setters allow us to modify what that value is going to look like for the person, right? We want to make sure that they are not directly affecting the variable. We want to always pass it through a getter or setter so that we can modify the value, that we can control what the property is going to look like, and everywhere it's referenced. That's why we use getters and setters, and we don't directly modify properties, because it can create issues. So we're going to create, so those are our properties. We have a public property and a private property. The private property is inaccessible from an instantiated object. So if we instantiate a new object from this class, we can't do anything. We can't access secret. It'll just slap us in the hand and say no. The public one, however, we can access it, we can set it, and we can retrieve its value. We have access to both of those. Let's create our first function. And the first function we're going to create is an overridden function, because like I said, PHP already has a built-in constructor. We're going to override that function and create our own constructor. So it's function underscore underscore construct, and then the block. This is a key. This underscore underscore construct is a keyword in PHP. It means something. You cannot create another function called underscore underscore construct, just to let you know. PHP supports overriding, but doesn't support overloading. Now, I don't know if Java supports overloading. It does? Okay. So PHP does not support overloading, which means you can't, which makes sense, right? Because it doesn't have data types. Like, you don't create data types. So it makes sense it doesn't support overloading. But some people find that frustrating because they want to be able to do overloading because they like the syntax and it's kind of neat, right? But yeah, PHP doesn't. So you get overriding but not overloading. We're going to add some parameters. Well, we're just going to add one parameter, just message. So believe it or not, what you put inside a set of parentheses is also a data type. The data type for the list you put in here is called a parameter list, and it's a data type that's built into programming languages. Every programming language has that data type, the parameter list. It's called a parameter because it's meant to be a placeholder. And a lot of people confuse that with arguments, and they interchange them back and forth, but they aren't interchangeable. Parameters are placeholders waiting a value. An argument is what you give to a function as the value to fill the parameter. Okay? So message is our parameter. This message and this message here are not conflicting because parameters are scoped within those parentheses, so they won't conflict. So whatever value you set here isn't automatically passed to here. They are completely separated. If you needed it to be, there is a way to do that. All right, so now we're going to take that message that we receive as an argument when this constructor gets called, and we're going to assign it to the message property. And in order to do that, we have to take advantage of another keyword. Exactly, this. This, and I hate describing this because you can't describe this without using the word this while referencing this, so it gets kind of convoluted. But this is a variable that is immediately declared by PHP. So $this is a variable, okay? When our object gets instantiated, it represents the object itself. That's what it's connected to. It's a reference to the actual object itself. So using this, you can access properties and functions defined within the class. That's how you do it, right? The cool thing about it is it's basically, well, it's globally scoped, right? It's globally scoped throughout the class definition. So it doesn't matter where you call it, it's always referenced to the actual class itself. The only time that changes is if you try to call this within a closure, it will break because it will reference the closure and not the class that's outside of it. But we're not going to do closures because I don't want to confuse you. So I don't even know why I brought it up. All right, so let's assign our variable. So it's $this. And you might want to try to do $message, but unfortunately that is incorrect. You have to lose the $. It's just message. You get only $1 per line. and we're going to assign it $message. If we were to use best practices, we would not perform it this way. We would call a setter that would set message for us. Next, we're going to set our secret, and we're just going to give it a default value. Secret equals psst. That's how you spell psst, by the way, according to every comic book ever. So secret is private, but because we are referencing it within the class, we can access its value, we can set it, and we can get it however we want, directly. However, when we instantiate the object, we still can't get the value of psst from the secret. So I think it's a good time to actually instantiate our object and take a look at that particular functionality. So right after the class, down here on the bottom, make sure you're outside of the class block altogether. We're going to instantiate the class. First, we're going to create a variable to put the class inside. I'm going to call my variable example. You can literally call it whatever you want. And then we're going to use another keyword. And that is, does anybody know what the keyword is going to be? Yep, new. That's exactly it. New example. And I have a constructor, so I can't just put a semicolon in. If I didn't have a constructor, I could. Instead, I have to treat this almost like a function. I have to add a set of parentheses, and then I have to pass the argument to fulfill the constructor's parameter. Okay? So I have to give it a message. Hello world's so boring. I'm going to use Bootstrap. That's my message. Once we've done that, what's going to happen is the class is going to wind up calling the constructor. The constructor is going to set this message equal to $message, so this message will be equal to Bootstrap. This secret will get set to psst, right? We don't have to call that function explicitly. It happens automatically when you instantiate the object. That's the great thing about constructors. So what you use constructors generally for is to set up defaults that you need inside your object. That's the purpose of a constructor. So our next trick that we're going to do here is view the message. So we'll just echo $example, and in order to access the message, we use the same accessor operator that we used up here. It's the arrow operator. Not to be confused with the one that they use in JavaScript. And then just message, just like we did up there. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and open up this page inside our browser. Is anybody still typing that out just before I switch over?
I have a question.
Sure.
Where did you set, so in the function construct message, where did you set what the actual message is? What you need to do
So
set equals something?
We did. That's what this is doing.
But
okay, so the constructor has one parameter.
Yeah.
That parameter is this argument.
That's example, not message. Okay, sorry.
No worries. Parameters can actually be called whatever you want. I could call this parameter Bob, as long as this is also Bob.
You want to put example instead of message in that constructor for that to appear?
It's like a Java constructor. Your constructor where you're taking and you're saying this variable equals the variable. This variable 1 equals variable 1. Okay. Similar to that. Then you instantiate it, you put it in to your constructor, and then it becomes that. It assigns it to this message.
Right.
because we're doing the assignment here.
The new after that,
Yeah.
very similar.
I think there is some slight differences between how classes are created via PHP versus the way they're done in like C or C++. Well, not C, C++, or even Java, which is closer simulated as well. I think you also have like auto accessors, and do you not have auto accessors in Java? Like where it just auto creates setters and getters and stuff, and you can just immediately.
For ID itself?
Oh, the IDE does that. Oh, okay, so you don't actually have auto setter getter magic methods or anything like that. Okay. Yeah. So basically, it's just a function, Alex. It's no different than anything
I just know
that you
like
would normally see in the way of a function. Think of it more like this isn't constructor. Think more of it like it's that. That's because that's exactly what would happen in C++. If you were to define the same thing, you don't call it constructor. You call it the name of the class name.
yeah, I get that.
Yeah. But in PHP, because object-oriented programming was an afterthought,
Yeah.
PHP only became object-oriented in version 4, and it was like layered on, and it was janky and crap. And then in 5, they actually tied it to proper C objects and stuff and made it better. But it was an afterthought. So because it's an afterthought, it doesn't mimic the way it's done in Java or C++ one-to-one, unfortunately. Yeah. So instead, you get this kind of janky function called construct.
I'm trying to open it. In my browser, it just comes up with validation.
Yeah, we're taking class underscore example.php.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to navigate to the thing in my browser, which is this one here. I'm going to go to localhost /comp-1006. Click on lesson 7. And it's going to jump to this because we have an index page, and the index page will immediately parse and be populated because that's the way the internet works. So the next, we need to navigate to class examples. So it's class underscore example.php. And if it's correct, you should see Burakacha at the top. It's like literally one of the funniest words. I don't even know where I got it from. I've been using it for years. I've had students hand it in as like test data in their assignments too. All right, so we've got Burakacha. Everything is working. Yes. Our next step. This is not the best thing in the world. We should be using setters and getters. At the very minimum, let's use a getter. So we'll create our first getter. And usually it's common practice to call it get and whatever the property name is. And yeah, you know what? We'll do that. We'll do common practice. Get message has no parameters, right? So it receives no arguments. And then we can actually do the echo functionality right directly in here. Though my OCD acts up terribly and I hate the echo statement there, that should be a return, not an echo. If we want to do it this way, I think we need to change the name just to satisfy my OCD. We'll call it display message instead of making it look like a getter. So that will do exactly what it says. It will display the message using the built-in PHP functionality of echo. And to call that function is very easy. We'll just comment this one out so that you can see that there. We don't need to write echo, right? We'll just do $example, reference the function, which is display message, and then, like any function, make sure you add the execution operator at the end of it, or the invocation operator, which is the parentheses. Java uses dot syntax, right? Not arrow syntax. Yeah, so if you were to do the same thing, it'd be example dot display message. Yeah, that's what I thought. I really should just do a crash course in Java because I can't remember. So now if you jump back to your browser, hit refresh, nothing's changed because you're still doing the same operation. because now you're doing it as a function. Let's try to access the secret outside of the function, right? Let's use our instantiated object, and we'll echo it out. Example, and we'll access the secret. And you all know it's not going to work, right? Yeah. But we want to see it not work. Plus, it's kind of helpful when you see the error message, right? In big orange. Fatal error, cannot access private property, which should tell you right off the bat that the property is the thing that comes after the arrow, that's the thing you're trying to attempt to access, is not accessible for you. One other thing to note if you're in your IDE, and we change this from a public function to a private function, the message will change. And it will say call to private method. So there's a difference there, right? Properties are obviously your variables that you have defined, and methods are the functions that you've defined. So when you read the error message, make sure you pay attention to the type of error it is, that it's a method and not a property, so that you don't wind up trying to go on a wild goose chase to figure out where the error is. Let's change that back to public. So I want secret to be accessible, and obviously I could just scroll to the top and change this from private to public, but like I said before, that's bad practice. We should create an accessor and a getter in order to deal with that. So let's do that. Let's create an accessor. So the accessor we're going to create is just public function get secret. And its whole operation will be to just return $this secret so we can see its value. And then to set the secret, we'll just create another function called setSecret. And at the end of the day, these are just functions. That's all they are. Just plain functions. They just look more complex. And we're going to give it a secret to store. And we're just going to set it by going this secret is equal to $secret. And because we have a getter and setter, if we wanted to mutate the value before we set it or get it, we can go ahead and do that. That's the value of having getters and setters and not directly setting the property. Yeah, I know this is super exciting stuff. So let's go ahead and set the secret, and then we will get the secret. So this is bad. Let's get rid of this guy. We'll just say ends in an error. We'll do echo. We'll add a break tag. We'll concatenate because we can't add it to the string template when it's a function call. So $example get secret. That will be psst, right? And then $example set secret. Go ahead and create a secret. And then using our wonderful shortcut methods, how do I duplicate a line? Alt, Shift down. Yeah, Alt, Shift down. And how do I move it? Just Alt and whatever direction you want to move it in. So the first one will say psst. The second one will set the value to I like pizza. And then the last one will say I like pizza out loud. All right. Anybody still typing that out? All right. Give me a few more seconds. After this, we'll connect to MySQL with PDO, and then we'll take a break. That'll get us through the first part of the class. So classes in PHP, super easy. Not difficult by any means. You can make them more difficult. You can get into inheritance, right? So that's where a class will inherit the properties and traits of another class. You can get into, not factories, what are they called? Abstract classes, which work more like structs. You can get into traits, which is an actual thing where you can define properties for a class, and then multiple classes can inherit just those traits. You can do some pretty complex stuff as a PHP 5 with object-oriented programming. And it's definitely worthwhile. Object-oriented programming, the biggest benefit of it is it better describes your data, right? It describes what you're attempting to work with. So it's a little easier to follow, and it definitely helps your code to be drier, right? Which is what we want to achieve. So I'm going to nip over to here, and here we go. Bootstrap Chops. I like pizza. All done. All right, so let's talk about PDO now that we understand how objects work. PDO is a class that's available built into PHP. There's several different types of classes, like part of the class libraries that are built into PHP already that you're welcome to utilize for whatever you need it for. PDO is one of those, and its purpose is for interacting with your database, no different than what you're doing with MySQLi. However, where PDO shines above MySQLi is that PDO isn't restricted to just MySQL. PDO will actually allow you to connect to any type of relational database that you want to work with. So MySQL, SQLite, MS SQL, Postgres, right? All these different types of flavors. Not Mongo or anything, not a NoSQL database like Mongo, DynamoDB, Redis, or any of those guys. It has to still be a relational database. It might even have to be a SQL type database. But the benefit to that is if you, in your application, outgrow working with MySQL and want to move into a different SQL database, you can do that with PDO very easily with very, very minor code changes. Pretty much all you have to do is just change the connection string that you're connecting to, like which particular SQL flavor you're using, and you're done. You don't need to go through countless hours of code modifying queries and everything else because PDO helps keep all that supported. So these are known as a distributive service layer, and you may hear this out in the industry, or a DSL. The idea of a DSL is to abstract commonalities between multiple resources, in our scenario databases, to abstract those so that it's one set of code that will interact with all of those particular resources regardless of which resource it is. DSLs are super important. You can actually go even one step further and get into something called an ORM. And what an ORM is it's an object relational mapper that basically takes the data in your database and it turns it into a class. And each table becomes a class, which is known as a model. And then you can interact with the model. And then it doesn't matter what type of database you're working with. The model does all of it, and the distributive layer in the background takes care of the code differences between whatever database you're working with. So that makes your life a lot simpler when you're working in larger scale applications and you need to consider scaling. So we're going to use PDO, and going forward, that's all we're ever going to use. But we're going to do the same thing that we did with the MySQLi. We're going to create a function inside a file, and then you can just port that function around, right? Makes things nice and easy. So if we go back to our code, which is here for me, I'm going to close out class example. And I'm going to open connect.php. And going forward, instead of dealing with like a local hosted database, we're going to start using the Amazon database exclusively. So I've created a new database on Amazon called examples, and the tables that we'll be using in class will come from there. So what you will notice is as we all insert records, it's going to wind over the whole whack of records all at once, right? Because everybody's working on the same table. All right, so we're going to create a connect function using PDO and connect using these AWS values, which I've already put in for you. Give me 1 second. I just want to open up my code. All right, so first we're going to wrap this in a function, which that's easy enough for us. We're just going to wrap connect. Like so. There we go. Those are wrapped in a connect function now. If you want to challenge yourselves, you could also take a look at actually writing a connect class at some point if you want to like push yourself to the next level a bit. Level up, upgrade. Once we've written the connect function around this, so your curly brace opener is above these variables and the curly brace closer is below these variables, right? So the block is around it. We can go ahead and uncomment these, just highlight them and then hit // and they'll uncomment. So highlight them and // or painstakingly delete the comment lines. Totally up to you. / is the one under the question mark. And you might think, oh, this is going to take forever. But it's literally 2 lines. We're writing 2 lines of code. So the first one is to create the connection. So that will be our PDO statement. And then the next one, return our connection. So I'm not doing any error handling in this right now. We will talk about error handling in another class where we're going to take a look at try and catch, because PDO is better handled with try catch than it is with just the error handling, the weak sauce error handling we were doing with MySQLi. But it takes a bit more of a lesson for that. So we're going to make this very simple. $connection equals, and we need to instantiate the PDO class. So what would I type to instantiate the PDO class? Yep, new PDO. PDO has a constructor, so we're going to need to pass the parentheses. And then we're going to have to feed the constructor the 3 arguments it's expecting. The first argument is the connection string. So it consists of a host and the database name. The next argument is our user. And the last argument is the password. So we'll put the user variable and the password in, and then we'll type out the connection string next. For the connection string, we're going to use a string template. That's why we're using the double quotes. String templates, for those of you that may have forgotten, allow us to put variables directly in the string, and then they will be parsed, right? Which makes things a little handier for us. Plus, it makes code look a little cleaner. So we're going to type in first the name of the database that we're working with, which is MySQL. :host. And this would be localhost normally, but for us, it's going to be our variable. So we'll put in the curly braces and then type in the host name. And that is a direct reference to the host defined up here. Those two are the same. When that gets parsed, the host name will get populated in that string. Then we end it in a semicolon, and we type in db name equals and a set of curly braces. And in there goes the db variable that we created. So if this was a connection string for Microsoft SQL, it would be MSQL. If it was for Postgres, it would be PSQL. And if it was SQLite, which I don't think would be supported, actually. I doubt they support SQLite, but there's a bunch of other SQLs that are supported as well. And then when we're done, we want our function to return the connection, so we'll return $con, like so. So while our connection string is quite simple, and working this part with PDO is quite simple. When we get into validation, sanitization, and normalization, that's where it gets more complex. And that's where PDO really shines because it gives us so much more security, but we have a lot more steps that we have to do. It's going to feel like we're just doing a lot of extra work, but trust me, the steps that we're going to do today are stripped down to the most basic amount of steps that we have to do, and I would actually even argue that it's less steps than what we should be doing. But yeah, we'll be doing that. So I think that's it actually for that part. Yeah, that's it. So why don't we take a break? We'll take 10 minutes. You guys can go do what you need to do, and we'll start again at 6:10. Yeah, so if you're cool. Okay, we're gonna kind of take a sidetrack from PDO for a second, and we're going to talk about something a little bit different, but still very important for you guys as developers. One of the biggest issues that I have found as a developer is that my design skills are really atrocious. That's because I'm not a designer by any means. So what I like to use, and you've actually experienced it, you just haven't realized it yet, is Bootstrap. So Bootstrap, as you can see, this wonderful thing. I mean, this looks nice, right? Like it's not terrible, right? For a guy who doesn't know design. Like I write these. I don't know if you knew that, but I write these. This is all Bootstrap. Bootstrap's taking care of all of this for me. So I don't need to know anything about padding, margins, line height, character spacing, none of that. Don't need to know any of that because Bootstrap handles all of that for me. It makes my stuff look nice. All I have to know how to do is take the components that Bootstrap has and put them in. That's it. And then Bootstrap will take care of everything else. So we're going to talk a little bit about Bootstrap, and we're going to talk a little bit, very, very tiny bit, about CDNs. Has anybody heard of a CDN before at all?
Yes, I use a CDN for Bootstrap. Instead of install it, I just use the CDN. So
Do you know what CDN stands for?
it's written here, so I'm not reading it. Yeah.
Yeah. Content delivery network. So what the benefit of a content delivery network is that in web development, we're always trying to get low page speeds. The smallest, the better, right? And the page speed is basically how long does it take my page to load in your browser? And there's a lot of factors that weigh into that, right? So one of the factors is server speed. So the response of the server from your request is one thing that can definitely delay your page speed. So at one point, people were hosting sites from home. Rogers sucks. People reach out through the internet to access your page. Takes like 5-6 seconds for Rogers to get their shit together and you to get the response back, right? So stuff like that. So now we use Amazon, DigitalOcean, Heroku, right? Which are super, super fast networks. Plus they have redundancy and load balancing, which allows, if there's too many people accessing the page at the same time, they'll actually duplicate it and send it through another port. Stuff like that. So that's not really an issue. Usually server response isn't the issue. There's other things that can lower your server response though. All the PHP code we're doing is on the server, right? If our PHP code takes a really long time to get through whatever it is it's doing, that can also render into a slow server response. So that's another possible issue. But to be honest with you, the biggest thing that drains page speed is assets. So CSS and JavaScript and images. Those three things will just absolutely catastrophically deep tank a page because they take so long to come through. Large CSS files, I mean, you can write a ton of CSS and it'll still come through in about 10 milliseconds, but if it takes a long time to parse, it can take a little bit longer to load the page. Large images, you should be always optimizing images and getting them down as far as you can because the bigger the images, the more time it takes to load. And then JavaScript, if you've got a lot of blocking JavaScript and it's taking a long time for your JavaScript to do the stuff it needs to do, that can also drain your page speeds. So CDNs, they kind of help with this by basically taking your code, putting it into a server, and then optimizing its delivery by using cache as much as possible. So basically what happens is if I access my website, actually even this site right here, you access this site right here, because I've already accessed it, all the assets have been cached, and you're going to get the cached version of those assets. So any compilation that needs to happen in the assets is already done. Any of the page load you're already done. Basically what happens is Cloudflare in the background takes the rendered version of the page and gives it to you already pre-rendered. So your browser doesn't have to render it. It's already done. It's ready to go. The other thing about CDNs is most of the assets that are on CDNs are pretty commonly used. Like Bootstrap, for example, powers, I think it's over, I wrote it down. It's a lot of sites. 18% of the internet uses Bootstrap. And there's like, I don't know, a few 100 billion websites. So it's a pretty big number. Jquery, one of the most popular asset libraries for JavaScript across the internet. Also, a huge percentage of people use Jquery. Underscore, there's a whole bunch of them, right? A whole bunch of different things. Font Awesome that people use. And because they're using them, you've likely gone to a site that has already delivered that asset to you. So it doesn't make sense that when you come to my site that you have to reload that whole asset if you've already gotten it at one point. So what happens is those assets actually get cached to your browser. Happens all the time. So your browser has a little bit of memory and jQuery gets cached to it, Bootstrap gets cached to it. So when you come to my site, you don't have to re-download those assets. They're already available to you due to the content delivery network. So content delivery networks, super, super important. We're going to use the content delivery network tonight to actually load in Bootstrap. We can load in Bootstrap in a few different ways. We can download Bootstrap and load it in, right? But there's no reason for us to do that. We can actually take advantage of the content delivery network and just literally stream it in, which is definitely more efficient. There is one downfall to CDNs when you're doing development. You have to be connected to the intranet because the CDN comes from the internet, right? Hence the content delivery network part, right? So it has to be connected to the internet. If you're on the road and you're trying to develop a site and you're not connected to your CDN, you're going to have some issues. So when you're doing local development and that's a possibility, then you kind of want to make sure you have the library pulled down and you use the pulled down version of the library. But it's rare, so rare that happens. All right, so what is Bootstrap? Bootstrap is a front-end visual framework that provides opinionated CSS and JavaScript for use in your application. And I mean opinionated. My God, is it opinionated. And it's mostly because it was built by, actually, does anybody know who built Bootstrap? Famous company. Twitter. Yeah, it's Twitter's baby, right? Basically, what happened was Twitter would get their developers to build different prototypes. And the prototypes that were coming through, while functional, looked like trash, right? And that was actually distracting. It caused issues for their QA team to be able to do quality assessment when it was janky and chunky to get through because the user experience was so bad. So what Twitter did was they came up with this CSS framework called Bootstrap. And the idea was that their prototype developers would use the CSS framework and put it into place. Any common user components were already created for them, like carousels, the things that slide back and forth, card shapes, drop downs, collapse boxes, stuff like that were already created for them. They just had to put them into their prototype. And then so that helped their quality assessment because now when they're going through the prototype, they're not getting stuck on visual elements. They're not getting, hung up on the UI or the UX. They can actually just quality assess the functionality. So that was the biggest reason, and then they released it to the public. That was version 1. We're now up to version 4. Version 5 is in current development, where they're actually getting rid of jQuery altogether, because right now it uses jQuery, but they're getting rid of jQuery, and they're going to use just vanilla JavaScript going forward. But that will be in version 5. They're on 4.4, so it'll be at least probably another couple of years before we see version 5. In the notes, just so you know, there's links at the top of here under each piece. I do recommend later on, if you're looking over the notes, click on those links because the notes don't do Bootstrap its entire justice. There's a lot more to Bootstrap than what we're going to cover today, like so much more to Bootstrap. All right, so Bootstrap, like I said, it's a front-end visual framework that provides CSS and JavaScript components. The idea is that even a person with poor design skills, like this guy, can produce a functional and visually appealing prototype quickly using Bootstrap. It prevents clients from getting hung up on silly visual elements because you don't wind up with UI UX issues. So your client can actually focus more on the functionality of the prototype you're building instead of getting hung up on the actual graphical elements. So I created us a plain form. If you jump over to your IDE, I think it's this one. Yeah, there we go. There's a massive form. If you click on index.php, it's actually not that big of a form. It's really just a lot of HTML. I think there's 126 lines of HTML. So you can see why I started with starter files. I didn't want you guys to have to type out 126 lines of HTML. That'd be a train wreck, right? All right, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I hope that's okay. There we go. If you're having trouble seeing, please move up. All right, so this is our basic HTML form. It has no styling currently to it. So if you jump over to your browser, you probably already saw it once when you went to just lesson 7. So get rid of the class. That's the form, right? Super basic, not very attractive user form, right? So your browser actually delivers a kind of their own opinion of CSS. So if you look at this form on here, it looks this way. If you own a Mac and you look on a Mac, it will actually look probably quite a bit different. If you move over to Firefox, it will look different. So it's based on the browser. The browsers have default style sheets that they'll apply to a form. And that's what creates these little square boxes. That creates, the color that they use for the placeholder text. All that is done by this default CSS styles that get applied by Chrome in my scenario, or Firefox in yours, or whatever, right? So the reason why we create our own CSS is not only just to clean it up and make it look better, but to also normalize our styles across multiple browsers, right? Because like I said, this is not the way it's going to necessarily look on another browser. For example, that's New Times Roman, and if you go to a Apple computer, it's Helvetica, right? And there's a slight difference in the font styles between Helvetica and New Times Roman. So we want to make sure that we have nice CSS, and this is where Bootstrap comes in. So we're going to add Bootstrap to this, and you're going to see a change right off the bat, because one thing that Bootstrap has is an opinion on what font you should use. And they like sans serif fonts, which are the ones that don't have little curls and little adages to the font itself. So the first thing we need to do is actually go get our CDN to include Bootstrap. So if you type in Bootstrap CDN, yeah, it's bootstrapcdn.com. It will take you to this page. Why is this dying? That's weird. Where did I put it? There it is. 1 second, my secondary screen's gonna die. There we go. Okay. So what I want you to do on this page is, if you scroll down a little bit, we're only going to include the CSS. We're not going to do any JavaScript components anyways. So we'll just grab the CSS. But the nice big benefit is if you click the down arrow, it gives you an HTML snippet. So you don't have to format it. You just click on the HTML snippet. It will automatically copy it to your clipboard for you. Jump over to your IDE. And I like to paste it above my title because I like to keep my title as the last thing in my head. It goes in the head and you just paste it right in there. It's like a nice big block of stuff. Make sure you go to the CDN and copy it. Don't try typing that out because it'll take you forever, and I'm not waiting for you. So right now, that is going to give us a better style on our sheet. If I jump over to the actual lesson itself, so that's the way it looks right now with the with Chrome's current opinion of what our CSS should look like, and just loading Bootstrap, it improves quite a bit right off the get-go. The font looks better, the distance between each of the elements already has improved, everything starts to look a lot better.
So we just copied the CSS form thing.
You're copying from here, you're gonna click this down arrow and then click on HTML. And that will copy it to your clipboard. And then paste that in the head on your
What was the HTML again for? A link something?
it'll look like this, link href.
Link.
Yeah. If you copy that HTML block, it should just paste it. Yeah. It already has all that snippet. So right off the bat, it looks quite a bit better. This font, I think it's called Soldier, and it's like a font from Google Fonts. And as you can see, all of the fonts have been replaced with that font, right? But we can actually make this look a lot better. Like right now, it's still using it's still using Chrome's, layout styling, and it's still using their kind of text boxes and their buttons and stuff like that. We can improve all of this using just Bootstrap. And the cool thing about Bootstrap is you don't write CSS. Instead, you just use classes. So you guys know what classes are, right? Not classes as in like a PHP class, like classes as in as like a style class, right? So we're going to use classes and kind of improve this. And the first thing we're going to do is actually improve the layout. Because right now it's kind of all congested. It's just a big long list of fields, right? So we're going to kind of compact it and make it look a little better than what it does right now. All right, let me find the code for that. All right, so the first thing I want to do, when you look at the fields, notice that all the text butts right up against the left side of the page. It's like right tight against the left side. It would be nice if it actually just formatted itself into the center and it wasn't right up against the left. So the way we can fix that, scroll down to where it says this first div, right after body. So scroll to where it says body and the div directly after, and you're going to add a class to that div called container. The Bootstrap container, what it does is it takes your code, automatically makes it 80% of the page size, and then adds 2 margins down the left and right. So now instead of all of the content being spread from 100% from the left side of the screen to the other side of the screen, it puts it in the middle. The best part about that, when you switch screen sizes, like over to a tablet or a phone, it actually adjusts the margins based on those devices. And when you hit phone size, it now is 100% of the screen. So it actually takes care of all of your responsive design for you. You don't need to understand the responsive. It's doing it all for you. So if we jump back to our browser and hit Control-R, all our code is in the middle. And just to demonstrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to open up my side panel here. And so as you can see, the margins stay, but as I slowly move it, and there's phone. Everything's now 100% from side to side. But when I remove this, we have the nice margins down the left and right. All right, so the next step, now that we've got the container, I want to actually go around and adjust where things are located, and we're going to use Bootstrap's layouts. So Bootstrap basically takes your page and divides it into 12 columns. We can take elements in our HTML and put them within those columns. So say we have 2 form fields, we can actually take those 2 form fields and put them side by side and put them in those columns that we want to put them in. And then as the page shifts, the columns will shift underneath each other to abide by the responsive design. Sounds complex? Actually, to implement it, super easy. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to work in sections. So scroll down to where it says section. We'll add a class to section that's just going to add a footer to the bottom of our page. Really, it's just a bit of space. So we're going to do class equals MB-5. M stands for margin, B stands for bottom, 5 is some random number they made up that I haven't figured out what it is actually in units. It doesn't seem to be ems. It's not pixels. I have no idea what it is. Is it? It only goes to 5. Yeah. Yeah, and it like, so 1 is like really narrow, and then 5's like just a little bit higher. That's it. Yeah. So class MB5 will give us a little bit more margin. Now we're going to work on our form, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our first name and our last name, and we're going to put them side by side, so the fields are side by side. So in order to do that, we first need to define a row. So the way we break it up is we have our 12 columns, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's go this way. 10, 11, 12, right? Any element can take up however many columns that we want. Once I break the chalk, can take up however many columns that we want. But if we want another element to go underneath, we have to define a row as well. So that's going to look like this. The first div directly underneath the form, we're going to add a class to it and call it row. Don't worry, we'll take it nice and slow because you'll get lost with all the divs. Next, on this next div, we're going to define it as a column, and the reason is, if you look, this is one element, right? Why am I not using my mouse? This is one element. This is the other element. So we want those two elements to go side by side. So what we can do is say class, whoops, don't multi-select, Sean. Class equals col. And what that will do is automatically put them side by side. So class equals col. We're going to do it to the one on line 26. And then we're going to do it to the one on line 33. Class equals col. So what that basically means to Bootstrap is it takes your 12-column grid, divides it in half, and then puts one element in 6 of the columns and the other element in the other 6 of the columns. All right. Anybody still typing that? Because we can actually go visually see that change. So if we go look inside our validation and sanitization, hit Control-R, you can now see that last name is on the left, or sorry, first name is on the left and last name is on the right because it is physically split the page in half for those two. But everything else is still on its own row. All right, let's do another one. We'll scroll down a little bit here. This is the CSS that's doing it.
It's so what we linked from
Bootstrap. Yeah, Bootstrap takes care of all of this for us. Yeah, Bootstrap's pretty hefty. It's really, really nice. All right, so this next div on line 41. So find the div on line 41.
Is there like keywords for Bootstrap? If I wanted to look up online, like what I could.
If you go to getbootstrap.com, that's where all of the components are listed, and I put links throughout the lesson plan as well. Yeah, if you do it through Google, you'll get the right version, or if you go for my link, you'll get the right version. All right, so we're going to add a class here, and again, we're going to make it a row because we're going to basically take the content that is below last name and make sure it stays below last name and first name. The div directly under that, we're going to make it equal to a col as well, like a column. So that's the one for the email. Oh, I see what I'm doing here. Okay. And then we're going to take phone and put it beside. So we're going to have first name, last name, then email, phone. So the next div on line 49, we're going to do class equals col. You can even just copy class equals col and paste it as we hit each of those spots. It's noisy out in the hallway today. Having a party. So once you've done that, if you Alt-Tab back out, refresh, and it's done correctly, you'll see email, and then you'll see the phone number block next to it. Notice that none of these fields spill over onto the left-hand side. The whole element has been moved over to the right. Lots of fun. So we want to take each of these, the phone number, and make them so they're side by side. Like, for example, the country code doesn't need to be very wide. The area code can be just a little bigger, and then the phone number can be just a little bigger than that, but all three can live side by side. So I'm going to jump back to here. So we have our class col. We have a div here for phone. It's the div underneath the label for phone on line 52-ish. We're going to put a class in there, and we're going to make it equal to row. And then we're going to make these three elements that you see below here all basically go side by turning them into columns. So if you follow along, we can do this all at the same time. Click on the div that's on line 53, hold Alt, click on the next div on line 57. While still holding Alt, click on the div that's on line 61. So you'll have three blinking cursors. And then we're going to type in class equals col and a dash. And like I said, Bootstrap breaks everything into 12 columns. The interesting thing is when you take a column and you put the element in there, that column that you've defined also now gets broken into 12 columns. And you can actually put things individually nested within those 12 columns. It gets kind of confusing. But the top one here, we can actually define how many of the columns we want to consume. So the top one, I'm going to make it 3 columns wide because it's only for the country code. It doesn't need to be much bigger than 3 columns wide. The next one down, I'm going to make it 4 columns wide because it's just the area code. And then the last one, we'll give it 5 columns wide. So 3, 4, and 5. Once you've done that, feel free to Alt-Tab back to your browser. And now you can see that the inputs are all side by side in a row. They might move down if your spacing is too big. No, they shouldn't actually. They should actually cause it to go off page a bit. I'm going to just pull back a little bit to 150 here. So we have our row and our 3 columns. Now we're going to move down a little bit further, and we're going to go to about line 69 to this div that just started on its own. And we're going to make it a class equals row as well. And this is where we're going to deal with all the address information, so it'll be nice and separated from the rest of the information. The first one we want to deal with is address line 1 and 2. They're going to be just by themselves in a regular column. We're not going to put them side by side because addresses can get quite lengthy. But we will define this as class equals col. So address line 1 and 2 are going to wind up in one column. And then this is going to get a bit mind-bendy. On line 82, we're going to make that a class equals col. So it's going to wind up taking all that content and putting it beside it. The div directly under that, we're going to do class equals row. So that's line 83. Don't worry, I promise this will be impressive when we're done. Seems just like a lot of typing, I know. And then the line 84 will be class equals col again. So what we're basically doing here, we have address 1 and 2, right? And they're on the left-hand side. Then we're taking our city, our province, and we're putting them over to the right, is the idea. So city stays the way it is. Province down here, which is line 91, add class equals coal so that it can go up. Right. So city and province will be side by side. Anybody lost? Or is everybody still kind of caught up? Okay, I'll wait for you. So line 82 is a coal, line 83 is a row, line 84 is a coal. What's that? It's not when you're typing out the HTML though, because that's the thing. Like, we're plugging this stuff into HTML I wrote. When you guys are writing the HTML, it just works, right? You just start doing it and putting the things in as you go because you're doing it in pieces, right? You're not about to take somebody else. Well, that could happen. You could take somebody else's HTML and have to do this. So we can actually go look at what we've done so far just to see what's happening. And we refresh. It should basically be your first name, email, address line 1, and address line 2 should be on the left. Your last name, phone number, city and province, country and postal code should be on the right. All right. If we move down to line 99, we're going to add a class equals row to that line. That's basically good. We're going to basically take country and zip code and put them under, which I mean, they're already there, but we need to use the class row so it doesn't goof up the margins and stuff. Then we're going to add a class equals coal to line 100. And then a class equals coal to line 107 for the postal code. So that will put a new row, country and postal code side by side. And then that's it. We're not doing any more layout. That's all there is. To the phone section? Yep. So it's a coal and then a row under the label. Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. All right. So if you save that, that should be everything. This is the last little chunk here. I'll just leave it on the screen so you can finish it up. Or is everybody good? Anybody need to? Good. All right. Let's jump over to the browser, hit Control R, and it should look like that. So city and province should be on each side, country and postal code, everything should look kind of nicely formatted. So the format is good, but Bootstrap isn't just about layout. Bootstrap actually has visual elements, right? We can actually make the form fields look a lot better than they do now. We can make the labels look a little nicer. We can improve the margins and padding, and we can take care of that with just a few simple classes on each of the elements to make it happen. So if we jump back to our form, we're going to start at the top of the form, where we actually have the form on line 24. And we're going to wrap each of these label input sections. You see how there's like a label and an input, and each one of these form elements has that. We want to find the div that wraps that. So it's the div right above the label. So just look for the label and then look for the div above. We want to find that. What we're going to do is we're going to apply a class called form group. And basically what it does is it takes label and it takes the input, immediately puts the label above the input, and adds in proper padding and margins so it's better readable, right? More readable, whatever. So we're going to do class equals form group. Okay. Once you've added class for equals form group, the next thing we want to do is change the style of the input so that they all look the same and they're all nicely uniform. By default, the browser will take the input and make it as wide as whatever the value is. That's just what it does. We want to make sure it's 100% of our column size, and Bootstrap takes care of all that for us. All we have to do is on the input, add a class equals form-control. So on the div that wraps the label and input, you're adding class equals form group, and on the input itself, you're adding class equals form control. Once you're done that, go ahead and save, and I'll go visually show you what it looks like. Like I said, it's tedious, but if you're building it, you don't even really notice it. All right. Good? Everybody good? All right, so if we jump back to the browser and hit Control R, you're going to notice that this field now looks quite a bit different than the other fields. Has these nice rounded corners, which by the way is 5 pixels, the radius on those corners. I've used Bootstrap for so long. Just like the blue that Bootstrap uses is James Bond for my best friend forever, and the reason why I remember that the hexadecimal code is 007 BFF is the hex code. So it's James Bond is my best friend forever. That's Bootstrap blue. Anyways, we'll see Bootstrap blue in a minute. So we have first name. Notice this is all nicely rounded. We want to make all of these basically look the same as this. So the way we're going to do that, scroll down a little bit to the last name label and do exactly the same thing. The div that wraps it, add a class and make it equal to form-group. And then once you've done that, on the input, you're going to add a class and make it equal to form-control. So we're doing exactly the same thing we did to first name. And we're going to do it to every single input element on the page. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and like work faster than I'm going, go for it. So I'm going to scroll down to where email is, which is around about line 43. The div that wraps the emails on line 43. Again, class equals form group. And the input class equals form-control. And that's on the email.
So we're doing it to every single one.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Once you've done that, go to where it says phone. And this one's going to be a little different. So email is the same, but the phone one will be slightly different. You're not going to add the, or are you? Yes, you are. The div on line 50, you're going to add class equals form group. Okay. And then you're going to add form control to all 3 inputs. So only the div on line 50 you add form group to. Okay. Just let me know. Everybody got that one?
Where it said col before, we're just making it form group.
No, this col stays col, but line 50 it says form group.
Oh, I had it div class row, div class col, and then the phone. Oh, so what is that in here?
So line 41 should be your row. Line 41 is class row. Then you have class col, and then form group for email.
Oh.
Yeah. I'll copy and paste this and throw it into Slack when we're done, so that if anybody has any mistakes, they can just copy it out of Slack.
No, I'm on the phone one. For some reason I had row then col.
Yeah, no, it's col, then form group. Yeah. And then each of these inputs, which I mean, how do we do multi-cursor? Hold Alt, right? Hold Alt, click, click, and then add class equals form control to all three. Once you're done that, feel free to go to address 1, and it's the same scenario all over again. Address 1, the div that wraps it is going to be class form group, and the input will be class form control. Same with address 2. Same with the city. My God, there's so many fields in this one. There's a reason for it. I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to use multi-cursor because this is taking forever. All right, and then once you get to checkbox, stop, because checkbox is a little different. Checkbox is around line 117.
Can you go up to like city and on state? I just want to make sure I get it right.
So you should on line 85 have form dash group, and then on line 87 you should have form dash control for the input. Good? All right. So even if you're still going away here, I'd like you to scroll down to 117, and we'll just take care of this together. I'll copy and paste this code, and I'll put it into Blackboard actually, because not all of you are on Slack. So this one's a little different. This is class equals form dash group, like the rest of them, space form dash check. And then the input has a class on it equal to form dash check dash input. So it's a little different than the other ones are. All right. So once you've done that, you can feel free to jump over to your browser, hit refresh, and your form should look like this. Should be all nicely formatted, very clean, easy to look at. And for those of you, it might seem familiar, and that's because Bootstrap makes up 18% of the internet. So you've probably seen this same kind of style in other forms before. All right, I'm going to copy this code, and I'm going to throw it into here for you. Oh, son of a gun, it does that. Oh yeah, it is in the lesson. Yeah, just go to lesson plan. It's right there. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. Yeah, just go to the lesson plan. Why am I making this harder than it needs to be? All right. So that's cool, but we have some other issues. This is nice. The form looks beautiful, but then we still have these kind of janky Chrome buttons, right? We can make these buttons look much nicer. So if we jump back over to our code, if you scroll down to where the buttons are, we can add class equals. The first class is called button, BTN. That basically takes the button, fattens it up a little bit, rounds the edges by 5 pixels, and then makes the text nice and centered. It also alters the color a little bit. If we want to alter the color even further, though, and make it Bootstrap blue, right? James Bond, best friend forever, then we do button dash primary beside it, and that will make it Bootstrap blue. It also takes care of the hover state, the active state, all of those states. You don't need to do any of that. It takes care of all of that for you. So we'll do it to that button, and the second button, we'll do class equals button, and we'll make this button danger, because it's a reset button, and if they click it, it will clear the form. So danger, Will Robinson. So button space button dash primary, and then the next button will be button space button dash danger. Make sure you don't use capitals. It's very literal. CSS, like anything in your computer, is very literal. A capital is not the same value as a lowercase letter. They have different binary values. All right. Anybody still typing that out? No? Alt-Tab and go look at your pretty buttons. Wah! There you go. Sign up button, notice when you hover over it, it has a hover state. Notice when you click down, it has a click state. So this is cool, but this still looks, I mean, it's okay, but it could be better. That's when we get into what I like to call the fat transformer, the Jumbotron. So if you scroll up to the top, we're going to add the Jumbotron. The Jumbotron, I don't know, it's like one of those things that feels out of place in Bootstrap. It's weird, but it is kind of cool looking. The way we add it, scroll up to line 12 where your header is. Click inside the header element and add a class to it called Jumbotron. Now, when it creates it, it's actually going to butt it up right to the top of our page. And I just know from working with so many graphic designers over the years that they hate that. So we're going to move it down just a little bit. So we're going to do an MY, so margin on the y-axis, -5, and that will actually pull it down a little bit. So once you've done that, Alt-Tab back out to your browser, hit Control-R, and there's your Jumbotron. It's really just a gray block. We can add a little more style to it, just a touch little more. If we jump back, the H1 right now, that text is the same text as it is throughout the page, but we can actually modify the font by using one of Bootstrap's many different display options. So we're going to add a class to this H1, and we're going to call it display-4. So that'll use the 4th display font that Bootstrap actually has inside their CSS library. The paragraph text that's right underneath that should actually be more pronounced than the other paragraph. So we're going to add a class to that first paragraph as well. And we're going to call it lead. Really, it just makes it bolder and it modifies the font a little bit. The HR is known as a horizontal rule. It draws a line basically on the page. Bootstrap already styles the line, so it's really nice and clean looking. But we're just going to add a little bit of margin distance above it and below it. And the way we do that is class equals my-5. So we'll add 5 arbitrary units of measurement above and 5 arbitrary units of measurement below. Whatever those are. I don't know what they are. Oh, sorry, no, it should be 4. Not that it really matters. Do either or. Bootstrap really wants you to drink the Kool-Aid, right? So they have all these certain like colors that they have. There's about 10 of them, and they want you to use their colors, right? Like the 007 BFF. We're going to use their colors, so they create classes, so you don't have to remember the hexadecimal codes. So if you come down here to where this paragraph is, we have a strong tag here for this validation. We're going to add a class in the strong tag. And the class is called text-warning. And that's really just yellow, is what it is. I'm going to do the same thing to the strong tag beside the word sanitization, and it's going to be text-danger. And I chose these because it makes sense. Validation's like a warning level. Sanitization's like they're going to F your database if you don't sanitize, so it's red. And then normalization's just a good thing to do, so we're going to make it green, which is class equals text-success. Good? Not good? Yes? No? All right. I'm going to jump over to the browser and we'll go take a look at what our efforts have done. There we go. Nice font, stopping your user from screwing up your application, validation, sanitization, normalization, and different colors. So, yeah, success, text-success. So here's the thing. Bootstrap makes up 18% of the internet, which means a lot of this stuff that you just saw, you probably have seen already. The way the forms are formatted, you've probably seen in 100 different places. Those button formats, they're iconically Bootstrap, right? And that's the thing. Bootstrap's been around for almost 10 years now. It's become almost too familiar, right? Just like WordPress. I can usually tell a WordPress site in about 10 seconds flat because it has the same kind of format as every other freaking WordPress site. So we don't want it to look Bootstrap. That's why Bootstrap doesn't force you to have these styles. You can actually override them. You can include your own style sheet, go through and modify colors, modify shapes, do whatever it is you want to override the styles that are in the page, but still take advantage of things that Bootstrap offers, like layout, right? That grid layout system is fantastic. It's super easy to work with. It makes your life a lot easier, but the biggest, coolest feature of it is it's responsive, which means that you're not having to design for mobile exclusively. It will automatically take care of it for you. So I created a little style sheet. I embraced this new trend that's coming out called neomorphism, and I wanted to play around with it on the weekend. So I created a style sheet. We're going to include the style sheet and see how it modifies Bootstrap into this new neomorphism look. So the only thing you need to make sure you do is include the style sheet after Bootstrap, right? Because cascading style sheets, right? It's in the word, right? You got to make sure it comes after that point. So we're going to add a new link tag. So if you type in link, the second option should be the emit abbreviation for it. And if you hit tab, it should autofill it for you. And I'm pretty sure I didn't put it in a folder. No, I just called it styles. So it's called styles.css. And I have to say, neomorphism is pretty freaking awesome looking. I really like it. All right, are we good? Can I move over? All right. Alt-Tab, hit Control, Shift, R, because you have to refresh entirely. And there you go. That's neomorphism. Isn't that sexy? That's a sexy page. I know. but it looks like silicone. Like it kind of has that like silicone look, right? And even if you move over the sign up button and push it, it indents like silicone. So go ahead and just click sign up. And you're going to see, please fill out form. That's coming from Chrome's validation feature that it has built in. And it's actually an API that you can tap into with JavaScript if you ever so want to. But the idea is to give you client-side validation. And that's fantastic. That's totally fine. The problem is, though, is client-side validation, I mean, it's like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's bullshit because it doesn't actually protect you against anything at all. The user can take all this content and write a curl request directly to your server and post it, entirely bypassing all of this altogether. Or they can simply right-click on your form, click inspect, find your form, double-click right in the damn browser inspect window, type in no validate, hit enter, scroll to the bottom, click sign up, let it go right to insert. So it doesn't mean anything. It's complete. What its purpose is, though, is to provide a better user experience. The idea is to make sure the user fills out all the form fields before it goes anywhere so that they can correct the problem before they have to do a whole round robin request. That's the only reason it's there. It's user experience. It is not practical, though. It's not something that's going to secure your website by any means. All actual validation, sanitization, and normalization that we want to do, we should be doing in the PHP server so that we can guarantee the data going into the database is correct, right? That makes sense because that's the place that we control. Like I said in week 1, the browser is stateless. We have no control over the client whatsoever. We cannot do anything in the client and guarantee it, but we do control the server. And because we control the server, that's where we need to do our validation, right? So let's take a 10-minute break. And then when you come back, we'll do some validation, sanitization, and normalization. And then we'll call it a night. All right? You're so happy. Why are you so happy? It's break time. So awesome. We have our form, and we have 30 minutes to learn validation, sanitization, and normalization. So the good thing about it is it's a concept. It's not like specific PHP functions or syntax that you're learning. It's a concept. It's a comprehension of a strategy that you want to apply, right? The only real PHP piece to it is how we do it with PDO. That's really it. But really, it's taking a look at the fields that we have and how we want to make sure that the data that comes back is, one, in the correct format, right? We don't want it to be in some kind of weird format. 2, isn't JavaScript or MySQL code. For example, I was marking all the midterms for Monday, and I hacked every single one of them. I inserted JavaScript into every single one of them, and when they go visit their midterm, it comes up and says, you've been hacked. Like, all it is an alert. That's it. But the point is I was able to put JavaScript directly inside their form, and then that gets submitted to the database. When the page gets loaded and the JavaScript loads out of the page, it immediately executes as regular JavaScript would. We don't want that because, well, I only used an alert. I could have made it a lot worse. I could have did a fetch command, grabbed all their cookies, and sent them back to me, and then stole their cookies from that page and then used their cookies to hack them even further or hack a different site. You can get really intricate with cross-site scripting, and you got to be careful about that, and you want to protect against that. So if we look at our form right now, oh, that's the wrong page. Here it is. All these fields, right, make up basically a contact. That's what this is. It's a contact form. And we have first name, last name, right? We have email. The way these fields are done might make you think that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 fields in our database, right? One for each field in the database. However, we're going to pretend that our database is a super old database that's been around a long time, that a really crappy database administrator working on it, and that's not what he did. He didn't put 12 fields. Instead, what they did, any day now, Workbench. Let's try it again. There we go. Instead, what they did was, what is with this application? Like I always say, Workbench is one of the few applications that's been in beta for about 18 years. Go to examples. Go, there's our contact page. I don't know how easy it is to see it, but we have the ID column. We have a full name column. I mean, who does that, right? They didn't even separate the first and last name. Email address, phone number, address, literally just address. So that's like the city, the province, or not if they don't provide any of that. And a new newsletter option. That's it. So they can opt in or out of the newsletter. Like this is a janky database, but this can happen to you. You get out in the workforce, you're not allowed to modify this because they already have 10 million rows sitting in it, and you can't just go in and add in extra stuff. So they say, nope, make it work, but modify the form so it's better. So that's where this time, which kind of sucks, you're instead trying to basically force formatting at the form level. That's why the form has 12 fields. Because what we're doing is we're forcing the user at this level to submit these fields in this way. However, we have another problem. The user can bypass this form entirely. If they understand the structure of that database, they can send a curl command directly to the database or to our insert page and just insert those 6 fields that I just showed you directly. Meaning they can forget to put the city in, forget to put the province in and the country, and it will still fill address. Or they can write go to hell as an address and it will still populate it and everything's hunky-dory, right? So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen, and that's where validation comes into play. Validation allows us to take a look at all these fields and ensure that they contain the data they're supposed to contain, that it's in the correct format that it's supposed to be in, and that it doesn't contain or have any bad stuff in it, like JavaScript or SQL injection stuff, right? So if we submit this form right now, doesn't go anywhere, we need the data, let's populate the form, and then what we'll do is we'll submit it. It will go to insert.php, which currently has no code, but it will sit there. And then we can just add some code and refresh and continue like we used to, right? That way we don't have to populate this form each time. So go ahead and fill out the form with your information, as detailed as you want it to be. And I don't know what happened to the checkbox. It disappeared. The checkbox is entirely gone for me. I don't know where it went to. I need to check it, so I'm going to go inspect it. Is it gone for you as well? It's right there. What happened? Input class form dash checkput type. It's there. It's just super tiny. Yeah, mine's not in a good spot. All right. I just want to show it, so I'm gonna write checked. Yeah, it's probably something in the CSS that's breaking it. It was working. Oh, actually, even my picture doesn't show it over here. Yeah, I must have goofed it up somehow. All right, that's fine. That's totally fine. Once you fill it out, go ahead and click sign up. And that will take us to the insert page. So right now, this page, as we add code, we can go ahead and reload the page, but we don't need to go fill out the form again. You just hit Control R, It'll ask you to confirm form submission, click continue, and that post body that we just submitted will just go back to the form again. So we can just keep running our code against it and see what happens. So let's jump back to our IDE, and we're going to open up the insert.php page. And there's two validation things in here, but we're going to bypass all that. All right, adding validation to our insert PHP page. So we're going to validate that the fields that are required have been submitted. So in our form, it's easy. Every field except for address line 2 is required. Address line 2 would be where you would put your unit number or your apartment number or something like that. Not everybody has an apartment or a unit number, so not everybody will have that line 2. But out of all the fields, that's the only one that isn't required. Every other field is required, including the opt-in field, which is a little interesting because if you don't check a checkbox, it never actually comes back to the form. Like none of it comes back to the form. It won't be a part of the post body. And that should be step 1. Let's see what's a part of our post body. So we'll add our PHP tag. And we don't need the closing PHP tag because we're not going to be doing any HTML in this form, or in this thing. So I'm just going to var dump $_post. So we can at least see what's inside the post tag. And hopefully you guys have gotten pretty used to using this tag. It's great for debugging what's going on, right? Because it just dumps the contents of everything. I'm going to Alt-Tab over to my browser. If I can figure out which one of the two it is. And I'm going to refresh and click Continue. And there's my post body. So my post body has a first name, a last name, email, country, area, phone number, address 1, 2, city, province, country, postal code, and an opt-in. How many of you don't have an opt-in? Probably most of you because you weren't able to check the box, right? Yeah. So it's missing. It's like entirely gone, right? We need to account for that because the database actually requires a value, even if it's false. It requires a value, and it's a Boolean, so we have to make sure it's true or false that we give it. So I'm going to show you guys how to take care of that. So jump back over to our IDE. First thing we want to do is our validation steps, and this is going to validate the format of the data, not just the format. It's going to validate also whether or not the fields have populated data inside of it. Maybe you're trying to do comparisons, like not next week, or is it next week? Yeah, it is next week. We're going to do authentication. We're going to want to make sure their password and their password confirmation match. That would happen in validation. We want to make sure their email and their email confirmation match. That's going to happen in validation, right? So those type of things need to happen in validation. So I want to check basically and make sure that all the fields that are required contain something inside of them. And the easiest way to do that is to basically check each one if they're empty. Now, I'm not going to write if empty $post first name, if empty $post last name, or we'd be here all night. Instead, I'm going to create an array called required, and I'm going to put strings inside of it. And the strings are going to be the field names from the form that I think should be required. So first name is a required field. Last name is a required field. Address 1 is required. City. Province. Even if they enter a state, we just call it province. Unfortunately, you got to kind of make that executive decision on what the field's going to be called, whether or not it's province or state. Totally up to you. Country. Postal code. Oops. Email. Country code. area code, and the phone number part. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 fields altogether. So now in order to check whether or not it's empty, I'm just going to iterate over the array using a for each loop, and I'm going to pass each one of these values into the for each loop, and then check the post and pass that value into the post as the key and see whether or not it's empty. So that's going to look like so. I'm almost out of battery power. What is this mess that I've done here? There we go. All right. So we're going to start with for each, the parentheses, and the block. For each, its purpose is to iterate over an array, and it means literally for each item in the array is basically what we're writing. So for each required item as $field. And $field is just made up. It's just a variable to store the item. And that gets passed into these curly braces, which are the block. Then we just check it. If empty, which is a function built into PHP, we pass the thing we want to check to see if it's empty. So $_post, square brackets. And obviously I'm not checking these fields, right? I'm going to just pass $field into it. And this is kind of janky, but we'll just do this the way it is. We're going to echo the $field cannot be empty. And we'll just exit. Next week when we do authentication, we're going to do this again anyways. And what we'll do is we'll route back to the form for the user and make them fix the field that has a problem. So this will verify whether or not the fields that we've received from the user are, like the required fields that we receive from the user, actually contain content. If any of those fields don't have any content in it, we're going to just exit the script altogether and write out the message that the field can't be empty, and that's it. So they would have to press the back button and go fix their form in this scenario, which is not the greatest user experience, but I mean, that's the way it was in like the year 2000. So, all right, if we scroll down a little bit, can I scroll down? Does anybody need me to stay up where the block is? No? Okay. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Our next step, we're going to validate the email is in the correct format. So we want to make sure that they've given us a valid email address. And the great thing is PHP has a built-in function to do that so that you don't have to write your own regular expression to figure it out. So we're just going to write if not, the not operator, filter underscore var. Filter var is a function that will basically check a string for a particular pattern, right? So we want to check this string and make sure it matches an email pattern, which we don't even need to provide. PHP already has it built in. So I'm going to do $_post, square brackets, email, comma, and we use one of their pattern constants. As you start to type it, filter underscore validate, you'll see the list. There's a big list of all the ones it actually validates against. The one we want to validate is email. So if it doesn't validate against the email, then we're going to echo, not in capital letters, echo the email isn't in a valid format or some message of the like. ASDF is also acceptable. So filter var in this scenario is going to return back a Boolean value. It will make this comparison and return a Boolean value of either true or false based on what the result is from this comparison. Filter var is one of those weird PHP functions that doesn't operate the same all the time. If you're doing validation, it returns a Boolean. If you're doing sanitization, it returns a string, which is kind of weird that they chose to do that, but that's what they chose to do. I don't know why it's not just a different function. So we validated whether our fields are empty or not. If we got past that, then we validate the email to make sure it's in the correct format. If we're happy, we're now ready to normalize our stuff. So we're going to add a new comment and call it normalization. And our first bit is we're going to normalize our strings. I want to make sure that every string that I have is that every word in the string is capitalized and that all the other letters are lowercase. Now, my mother-in-law, she's a boomer, right? She's 67, she's a boomer. And so when she fills out a form, she hits caps lock and then just goes, right? So everything is in capitals. So when there's forms all over the place on Amazon, the bank, everywhere else that has her information all in nice capital letters. I want to make it so it looks like a human actually typed it. So we're going to lowercase all of the words, and then we're going to capitalize only the first letter. So the way we're going to do that is obviously we're going to iterate because we're super lazy programmers. We'll iterate over the required. Might as well. It's there for us. As $field. And that's okay because, yes, some of those are numbers. And it might seem weird that we're going to run lowercase and uppercase, but is it going to affect the number? No. So who cares, right? No reason to create a new array just for strings. And we're not really, like, benchmark-wise, we're not really losing that much on it. So we're going to say if the $field equals email, because I want to skip the email one, we're going to use this keyword called continue. And what continue will do is if that condition gets met, it won't continue to parse the code inside the for each loop. It will just go to the next item automatically. You can call continue in for each. You can call it in for loops and while loops. It's a valid keyword. And it works in literally every language I've ever worked in. $_post. So I can't speak for Java, but I'm sure it is a thing. Yeah. Yeah, you probably have continue, break, and return. All three of those are part of that library. Equals string to lower is the name of the function. It's a built-in PHP function. $post, $field. So what we're doing is we're taking our whatever this value happens to be, and we're making it all lowercase, and then we're storing it right back in the original place. We're going to do the same thing again, but this time we're going to UC words, which means uppercase words, $_post, $field. So that will uppercase all those words. So basically we take all the capital letters that somebody just shoved in, we make them all lowercase, and then we go back over it and uppercase each of the words. And basically what it does is it does it by the space character. So if you put a dash between two words, only the first letter will get uppercase. It'll ignore the dash. It will pay attention to the dash as though it's part of the word. All right, next we want to normalize our numbers. And this is going to be a little bit more interesting. One of the issues that we have is that people format numbers, like phone numbers, in every different way possible. For example, I only put 1 in for the country code, but a lot of people will do +1. Area code, I just do 705, but people will like put brackets around it on their own. And then the phone number itself, what's the most common character people use in the phone number part? The dash, right? They separate the 3 and then a dash and then the next 4, which is fine because I want that format when we go to insert in the database, but I want to do it. I want to control that whole piece. So I have 3 steps that I want to do. I first want to grab only the numbers out of each of the number fields, just the numbers, and pull them back as an integer. Then I want to take that and I want to store that back in the field value. Once it's done, then I'll go through and format it as an actual phone number and store that in the database. That way, every phone number in the database gets formatted the exact same way. So let's do, again, we're going to iterate, but this time we're not going to iterate over the required, obviously. Instead, we're going to pass it the fields as an array literal. So just type the square brackets right in there. I'm going to type the first item as country code, the next item as area code, and the last item as phone_number. And again, just as field. So for each, we'll take a variable, or you can actually put the array literal directly into the for each, which is perfectly valid if it's a small array. If you've got like we do above, where there's like 7 or 8 different items, I don't recommend doing that because it makes it harder to read. Put it in a variable at that point. So step 1 is going to be find all the numbers. That's our first step. And in order to do that, we're going to use a PHP function called pregmatch, which stands for pattern regular match all, which makes no sense. You just call it regular expression, but whatever. Preg match all. Preg match all takes minimum 2 arguments, but you can pass it a third argument, and what we will do with the third argument is it will take the matches it finds and store them in whatever variable you provide it. So the first argument is a string, which will be a pattern. The second argument is where we want to look for that pattern. And then the third argument is where we want to store the matches. So I'm just going to create a variable called matches. We don't really have time to get into regular expression and me to fully explain it. I'll kind of give you an idea of what this is doing. Regular expressions start with 2 forward slashes, and the pattern goes in between them. So they're your delimiters. They're the endpoints. Okay? Then the expression goes in the middle, and I'm only looking for numbers. So I want to capture /d, which stands for digits, and plus, which means be greedy about it. Otherwise, it will only find 1 and return 1. The plus sign says, no, get them all. Go catch them all. Like Pokemon. Get all the Pokemon. Pregmatch all will literally run this expression as many times as it finds numbers, which is what we want. So not only is it greedily finding digits, it's greedily finding digits as many times as it takes, because if there's a space, it will stop at the space and just return back that first set of numbers. We need it to keep doing it for the whole length of the string. We'll write a comment in here saying $matches will be a multi-dimensional array. We need to flatten it. So multi-dimensional, meaning that it's an array of arrays of arrays. We want to take all the data that's inside the array of arrays and put it on one level, basically. Just turn it into a single dimensional array. And this code looks like this. Take $matches. We're going to call PHP's array merge, which will merge up arrays. And we're going to do something called splatting. It's ... You will see this again when you guys do JavaScript stuff. ... $matches. It will take the array, break it out, and return it back as a perimeter list, and then take the perimeter list and merge them all together. You don't need to understand it. That's the syntax for flattening. If you do a Stack Overflow, how do I flatten an array in PHP? You'll find that. That's basically the way it works. And then the next thing is to convert the array into a string. PHP has two functions for working with strings and arrays. Implode will take an array and convert it into a string. Explode will take a string and convert it into an array. So the way we do it is we're going to say $_post $field equals implode. Argument 1 is the glue. So what you want to glue each array element together with. So we'll just do a set of empty quotes, because you can't provide it null, it breaks. And then the second piece is the array itself. So we'll do matches. And the end result of that will be that country code will be only a digit, like an integer. Area code will be only an integer, and phone number will only be integers. Any other characters the user has typed will be stripped out entirely. Quite a bit of work just to strip out all the extra characters. We get to do it one more time. This time for the postal code. We're going to normalize the postal code. Actually, you know what? We'll stop there. Why don't we var dump our post body so that we can at least see what it looks like compared to where we started with. And we'll continue the rest of this next week at the beginning of class. So go ahead and add a var dump at the bottom. That way you can see the difference of what we've done from the beginning to now. Bye. Cheers, Alex. Anybody still typing? Okay. Yep, no worries. Did any of you go to North OT? No? Should go. It's worth your time. There's like industry professionals there, so you can meet people looking for co-ops and stuff like that. Don't recommend taking your resume, but like talk and meet and see if places are hiring and stuff like that. But the other thing is too is just the amount of stuff you get from it with these guys talking about the stuff that's coming out in the industry is worthwhile. You have to consider like Georgian College, you guys are learning Java, but the reality is there's not thousands of Java jobs out there. Nobody does Java. We're all doing JavaScript, and startups are where it's really at because that's where a lot of the money is too, and that's all JavaScript based, right? So it's worthwhile listening to these guys because they tell you what the industry is looking for, so you kind of know where to focus, right? I'll let you guys know the next one. It'll be next month, and I'll let you know when it is, and you can sign up. You get free food. You get free pizza. Who doesn't want free pizza? And every one of them's like that. All right, so let's jump over to the browser. Hit refresh. We'll zoom in a little bit. And you can see the slight differences. There's not very much because I typed my code in basically the same way. But the phone number looks fine because I typed it incorrectly. Did I do anything goofy? I didn't do anything goofy. Did anybody else do anything goofy? Did anybody else add other characters in? Did you put capital letters in? Did it correct it? Yeah, so it should correct it. Oh, right, it will. Yeah, we're going to fix that afterwards. Yeah, so if I put these all in as capitals, I'm going to add bracket 1 bracket 555 bracket 555 dash 5555, right? Hit sign up, and you can see that the first var dump has them in capitals, and it has these extra characters around the integers. But then if you scroll down, The integers are put back to just regular numbers, and these are look more formatted correctly. The only downside to this is my name has a capital K, so it's capital M, small c, capital K. That's like a common convention for many Scottish names, right? And while I don't care, because I don't take offense to that, other people might. So you kind of have to weigh it out whether or not you need to maintain that format, but it's going to require lots of extra logic in order to figure that out. Just incidentally, Amazon doesn't give a shit. My name is capital M, small c, small k, small I, small n, because they format it that way. That's just what they did. So, yeah. Just keep that in mind. Yeah, so next week we'll finish this up in like the first 10 minutes of class, and then we're going to be doing authentication next week. So, and like full authentication, not a library. We're going to roll our own. So, hopefully that's good for you guys.